Hello friends. For today's video, I wanted to give a list of recommendations for if you liked the game Lies of P. This has been one of my not just favorite video games I've played this year, but it is now one of my new favorite games of all time. I flew through it, I had so much fun. I was really angry a number of times because some of those bosses are really challenging, and also the guys that just spear you and knock you off of stuff, the worst. But anyway, I had such a good time with it that I immediately wanted more. I started New Game Plus, but then I thought, what are some other things that are going to give me this in some capacity, whether it's the story, the themes, the aesthetic. I just wanted more like Lies of P. And I figured I probably wasn't the only one. If you're new here, my main channel is dedicated to books, and then this channel is about all the different other kinds of stories across mediums. So manga, comics, video games, TV shows, adaptations. And I know that there are other people like me that like stories in all of their different forms, and thus I wanted to build upon that and do a recommendation style video that's not just gonna mention more video games, but I actually wanted to reach across mediums and find different things that you might like. And before I get into my recommendations, if you have any of your own, please feel free to leave them. It is so helpful when somebody can come to something and not just have my single recommendations, but all of yours as well. And if you're looking for just video game recommendations, I'll have some lists in the description bar down below that focus on that. I'll go ahead and start with the video game that I think the themes and the setup for the story are so similar, and I'm shocked that I have not seen it on more lists, because everybody of course lists Bloodborne and then other Souls games, it feels like. And I can't believe nobody has mentioned Nier Automata. The aesthetic is very different, as this one is sort of a dystopian, apocalyptic type of setting, and you follow these cyborgs who served humans, and something has happened that has caused humans to have to leave the planet, and now the cyborgs are trying to basically clear the planet out of the robotic forces that have taken over so that human beings can come back. And I don't know how this has not ended up on recommendations lists, because that is so similar to the plot of Lies of P. You see P being a puppet, but basically a cyborg, or robot, depending on how you look at his makeup. And he is trying to go against other puppets and then these other beings that you encounter in the game to make the city of Krat safer for his basically human masters. The general setup is very similar, and then on top of that, the themes in Nier Automata, so much of it is about what it is to be a person, the sense of agency for the cyborgs, and also if mankind is wiped out, what does that mean for cyborgs and their way of life? And I think you also see some moral conundrums occur, because sometimes it seems like the robotic forces themselves are not necessarily just pure evil, and that there are reasons why they've done what they've done. And you start to see some of that with the puppets in Lies of P also, and uncovering that in Lies of P and then uncovering that with Nier Automata is part of what makes both of these games absolutely fantastic. I will add, I sadly have not gotten all of the endings of Nier Automata. I know that it enhances the story overall. Lies of P, while I think there are a couple of different endings, we got the best one. I got the best one on the first try, but there's also an added benefit when you do New Game Plus that you can understand the language of the puppets, and it sort of puts things in a different perspective, and that shift of perspective is true of Nier Automata on playthroughs as well. So there's just so many reasons why I think these games are so similar. Is the gameplay itself extremely similar, or the look of them? No, but I still definitely think that if you're invested in the story elements and the themes, you have to check out Nier Automata. I'm going to get into some manga and book recommendations now, and the first one that came to mind would be the book The Bone Shard Daughter. This is now a completed trilogy, so if you do like this one, the second and third books are out. The first one in particular is especially the one that came to mind in thinking about some crossover. And the reason being, it's kind of hard to talk about and go too into detail because I don't want to spoil things for this book, but it has something to do with the magic system. There are these beings known as constructs, and they're similar to puppets. They're similar to P in Lies of P, and the idea is that these constructs are built through pieces of bone from humans, and this emperor who has magic is able to construct these beings to do his bidding. And the more intricate the construction, the more commands they are able to carry out, the more lifelike they'll be. And then you can make really simple ones that just have essentially one purpose. And one of our main characters, Lynn, is trying to figure out how this magic system works as she is next in line for the throne. And it is vital for all of the different places in this world that she knows how to make constructs and command constructs. And also you can manipulate them when you start to change their makeup. But she has lost her memories, and so she's trying to gain those back. But as she's gaining memories and as she's discovering more, there's some twists and turns that you don't necessarily anticipate. And it's not just that magic system, but also the things within the twists and turns that I think are really prevalent in some of the twists and turns of Lies of P also. And I just definitely think that if you really are interested in that sense of agency of your main characters and the questions that arise about, okay, well, if you give life and function and thoughts and feelings to these beings, who's to say they aren't in their own right humans as well? So definitely would highly recommend The Bone Shard Daughter. I do think that the second and third books become a little bit more fantasy, and some of those mystery components are not as prevalent, but still that first one in particular is very, very much a connection in my mind to Lies of P. After that, we have one that is very abstract and not the easiest to get into. It's kind of dense, and it was one of those books that when I first finished it, I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. But it was such a weird reading experience, and there are aspects to it that I just really felt you might be intrigued by, and that would be The Bone Orchard. So I didn't mean to find multiple things that had the word bone in them, but The Bone Orchard, the setup is that you follow a woman, a collection of women. So the reason that I'm kind of unsure how to describe it is you're basically looking at one being who has somewhat fractured themselves so that different parts of themselves exist in other beings, and they've literally kind of grown these beings and then put parts of themselves into them so that no single one of them is entirely whole, you could say, but they all make up a single person. And there's also some interesting parts of the story where people have things called mind locks, so they can't really access certain thoughts. If their brain starts to go down a certain route in their mind, it gets cut off and they can't remember certain things or really elaborate in their minds on certain events. And you're following this character who clearly has some kind of past that has caused her to want to do this to herself, but you don't know, is this a result of something she's endured, or has this been forced upon her? What happened? And you're trying to discover more of that, as there is somewhat of a murder mystery going on at the same time. And then aesthetically, I actually think this one has some connections to Lies of P. I would not say that is the biggest emphasis as to why I'm recommending this one, but if you like that sort of Victorian steampunk feel, this one has a little bit of that, and I think it really contributes to that sense of creation being a part of technological advancements. It's weird though, because you are sort of navigating the story through these different parts of the person, so you feel like you're following multiple people, but it's the same person. So it's a little disorienting, but it's an experience, I will say that. Afterwards, tapping into the more I want to become a god and alchemists getting a little too big for their boots, I'll say. Fullmetal Alchemist, of course, right? As soon as not just because they said the word alchemist, but you have these people that want to become god and they are tapping into powers that are probably too much for them. Fullmetal does that so well. Is the setting similar? No. Is the tone similar? Not even a little bit. But those particular plot lines and those themes are explored fantastically in Fullmetal Alchemist. And to me, this one feels like it's a piece of the lore of Lies of P and then come to life and explored through these other characters and in a different setting. It's almost like what Lies of P would have been before Krot was taken over by the puppets, where everything is a little bit more bright and navigation and technology and transportation is just so exciting and there's so much innovation happening, and yet, right, that's the big thing, and yet it all falls apart. And Fullmetal It's completed just like the Bone Orchard. If you're not really into manga, but you do like anime, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is fantastic, so you can definitely check that out. Love, love, love Fullmetal. One of my favorite series of all. It is in my top 5 series of all time. I love it and can't recommend it enough. After that, we have one that is more connected to the part of Lies of P that has to do with what has happened to some of the humans that are left alive after the puppets frenzy, but are they really alive anymore? And that would be the manga series Girl from the Other Side. This one, I would say the story itself is pretty different. It's very bleak and sweet at the same time. The art is very minimalistic. The style is very different, but that feeling of there being some people left behind, and yet it's dangerous for them because there are these creatures that can form, and if you're not safe and you get too close, you might find that this plague comes upon you as well. You're going to see a lot of that in The Girl from the Other Side. If you've been hesitant to check out manga simply because sometimes it feels like the series go on and on and on, they're never ending, and it just seems very daunting, this series is not very long. It is very abstract. It really makes you think, and that's part of what I really liked about it. It is a little convoluted, and I think that some things are up for interpretation, especially about the ending. Some of the explanations you get, you almost feel like you need to go back and read things again, and there is just such a sense of mystery in this. But I do think that that feeling of, is mankind going to be wiped out? That is very present in this, as I would say it is in Lies of P as well. Those are my main recommendations. There's only one more that is really not similar. It's just there's one tiny element to Lies of P that I think this other game does exceptionally, even though the colors are different, the gameplay is different, everything about it basically is different. Ori and the Blind Forest. The only reason I'm mentioning this is because while Lies of P is, of course, understandably compared to Souls games, I think that Lies of P tells its story a little bit less minimalistically than the Souls games do. I don't feel like I have to read every single item description to have even an inkling of an idea of what's going on. Whereas Lies of P, it's like there's P himself does not really speak. P himself does not really convey a whole lot, but what little you get with even just being able to interact with the cat differently throughout the game, depending on the choices you've made, and like him aging, and like every now and then there's an expression that he'll make. That kind of storytelling. In Ori, you don't have any real voices, and you don't really see cutscenes where people are talking. It's just you pick things up from the visuals and the sounds. Because Lies of P, the sound effects were really fantastic too. And just the way in which the games were able to build these stories and build these feelings within you through the visuals and through this somewhat minimalistic storytelling, but present and there if you really take the time to pull it all in. I think both of these do that well, even though they do it in different ways. So I just wanted to, I just love Ori, and I just love Ori. So I kind of just wanted to mention that one because it's a great game, even though it's different in most ways. But anyway, I would love to know your recommendations. There's a few that I have seen video games wise that I'm definitely interested in and I want to check out. But I sort of just wanted to play more Lies of P before jumping into different games. I don't know that I'm ready to say goodbye to it yet, but I would love to know your recommendations. And then also for TV shows, books, movies, anime, whatever the case may be, I would love to see those as well. But thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.